Hey, would you like to learn the void of course technique we talk about on the podcast often? Well, it's in Chapter 4 of the Book of the Moon. The audiobook is available now on Audible and on Apple Books. And this episode of the Fun Astrology Podcast is brought to you by the Book of the Moon audiobook. So pick yours up today and learn that technique and use it for yourself. Welcome in to the midweek Hump Day, May 8th, Fun Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller, hi. How are you? I hope that you have at least been aware of that the full interview with Steve Forrest is now out. It came out last night on the new moon. So here we are. Hopefully you did a creating ceremony yesterday, and now we watch that blossom and grow. Today we are still experiencing the uber tight bundle. There's nothing aspecting anything else. The moon is changing signs. Today it goes void, of course. You heard about that in yesterday's episode. Okay, those of you who like exact times, 5:55 is when it goes void, of course, Eastern Time. 5:55 this evening, and it does so with a sextile to Neptune. Then that exiting Taurus moon becomes a Gemini moon tonight. So I think the key word that we should be keeping in mind today is multitasking. And this goes all the way through Friday. So we have 2 full days after today. So all day Thursday, all day Friday, Gemini moon. Get that to-do list out and divide and conquer. You can be doing more than one thing at a time over the next couple of days. But also make sure that you are of one mind. Don't be of divided mind. Which should I do? I could do this, I could do that. Know what your priorities are. Work your way through it and divide and conquer. Now, I've been keeping up with this a little bit in our Facebook group, and I've suggested to our Facebook group folks some apps that you can download on your phone to keep in touch with these sunspots. Man, the sun has been active this week. There have been 2 big solar flare zones on the sun, and they're both starting to, one has already kind of moved out of the way. The other one is definitely sliding off stage. But boy, it has been super powerful. So if you've been feeling it, I woke up not this morning, but yesterday morning, woke up definitely realizing that a big one was underway, and it was. I can feel it in my heart. Got up, took some magnesium, went back to bed. It worked great. But that is another present influence in our week that is not tied to astrology, but it certainly is tied to the sun, and we have been getting bombarded. Also, what was it? Monday, I believe, we had a really big Schumann resonance spike. Some of you might have seen that online as well. So there have been quite a few influences. As the bundle is so tight and not aspecting, other things are. And that's why we try to stay in touch with the various things that are impacting our lives from a solar sky type perspective. All right, now, as we mentioned, the full interview with Steve Forrest about the Book of the Moon is out now, and I'd like to just pick another little couple of minutes here that we can excerpt from and enjoy reflecting on these various characteristics of the moon.
It's one of my favorites. The moon is so central to astrology, and it tends to get short shrift. Everybody references it, but there's so much depth and complexity to the moon that simply gets lost.
Okay, now that breeds a question. So did you have the body of knowledge before you wrote the book, and the book was basically getting that body of knowledge out, or did your body of knowledge increase as you were writing the book?
Your moon is working overtime here, Thomas. That's a very intuitively astute question. The Book of the Moon is, I guess I should interrupt myself and say, I've never written a book without learning something in the process of writing. But with every other book I've written, the body of knowledge was fundamentally there and intact, and I just needed to write it down. With the Book of the Moon, there was a tremendous learning curve. The more I wrote, the more questions formed in my mind and a little more research. And before I knew it, I was a snowball rolling down the side of a mountain, but it was the side of a mountain I didn't know was there in the first place.
I love that. I can only imagine. How long did it take? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly. My books typically take me 12 to 18 months to write. I think that would be a pretty accurate estimate.
Okay. All right. Now, speaking of, in the early part of the book, you set up some, I just called it moon features for lack of a better word, cool tidbits and knowledge that I guarantee most of everybody listening, there is something in there you don't know about the moon, either astronomically or astrologically. And it's not just a bunch of astrological stuff. You tell us about the moon and its orbit. And is there one of those little tidbits that's most interesting to you?
You promised me no trick questions. This one is along the lines of which child is your favorite, you know? But I guess to give you some kind of honest response, the lunar declination was eye-poppingly important. I felt that I'd been aware of it in a dim sort of, back burner way. But when I started actually looking at the declination of the moon, it was like realizing there was another continent on the earth that I had not been aware of. It felt that important. Some of your listeners probably don't know what I'm talking about with declination. It's a pretty simple idea. If we take Earth's equator and just project it out onto space as if you could see it like a line in the sky, the moon and really all the planets are most of the time above it or below it, like New York City is north of Miami. It's just like latitude on the Earth. It's called declination in space. And the moon can move pretty substantially north or south of that celestial equator. And once it gets above 23 degrees, 26 minutes of arc, which sounds ridiculously precise, but that's as far north or south of the celestial equator as the sun can get. And it defines the first day of summer or the first day of winter, north or south. The moon gets a little further. It's called out of bounds. And when it gets there, it's wild.
And as we've mentioned, it is available on Audible and iTunes, and I do get support financially when you buy. So do yourself the biggest favor, do me a little favor, and get the Book of the Moon on audiobook. You'll love it. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you back tomorrow. Bye-bye.